Last year, Montenegro sent an entry to Eurovision, withdrew it again in a controversy over broken rules, sent another one, and then finished last in the semi-final. This year, things looked for all the world like they were going to be better, until after the show, when several of its participants decided to deliver a masterclass on how to lose with absolutely zero grace or decorum. Seriously, one of them started Instagram beef with a 13-year-old. Oh, and there was someone promising free holidays for people who voted for them as well. This year's Montenegrin selection is going to need a dissection. So today we're going to try and work out exactly where it is they stand now, and whether the eventual winner has any chance of avoiding the same fate as last year. Quickly before we get into it, if you enjoy the video, you can subscribe using the button which is presumably down below somewhere, and you'll find the link to my second channel where we are going to start posting videos soon. I've been having a bit of an itch to branch out from Eurovision for a while now, and this seems like as good a time as any, so make sure you check there. Now, like I said, the backdrop for this show wasn't exactly sensational. Montenegro is a country of just 600,000 people, and pulling together any national final at all with a country of that size is going to be a big task. There were, once again, just like last year, a very small number of submissions with just 37. And the budget was never going to be any more than whatever creative director Vladana Vucinic could find in her pockets. Despite that, there were some strong songs in this selection. For the first time in 2026, that means we're going to go through a national final in detail. There are a few contenders worth covering here, but we're going to start with one of the pre-show fan favourites. That was Lana and Georgia with Temperatura. There are two things that the Balkans have excelled at in Eurovision more than anything else. The first is sending ballads that sound absolutely nothing like this song, and the second is sending bangers that sound exactly like this song. This could easily have been sung by Hurricane, not that one, who represented Serbia in 2020 and 2021. For that reason, it fits pretty perfectly with one of the default Balkan molds at Eurovision. To be clear, this is a compliment because it faithfully represents one of the most popular genres of music in that region. This kind of thing does always come with asterisks though, and the same is true here. This is the kind of music that simply cannot come without every element nailed down to a T. The vocals need to be on point, the song needs to carry itself for the full 3 minutes, and it can't get overly repetitive or boring. In addition to that, you need a choreo that transforms it into an all-singing, all-dancing, energetic performance. Unfortunately, given that this didn't win the show, I think you might be able to see where this is going. In fairness, the uphill battle starts with the venue in which the show takes place, not necessarily the artists themselves. Given the budget, it's totally understandable that we're operating in a small studio with no live audience. The problem is, for this song, that takes away one of its big weapons. The ability to feed off the crowd would have enhanced every part of this. The limited technical abilities of this show inhibit every performance, but this in particular suffers from the relatively small available number of camera angles and the small size of the stage. That in turn is going to inhibit the choreo that I was talking about. Unfortunately, beyond that, we just have to look to the performance itself. For starters, that choreo was just not there. It was not energetic enough and it wasn't dynamic enough. In addition, the balance between the two vocalists was really odd. It takes more than 2 minutes before Georgia even shows up on stage, and while this could work if his arrival elevated the song in some way, that just didn't happen. Georgia appears, sings about 2 lines, either pre-recorded or with heavy backing, and then awkwardly acts out some really rudimentary choreo. It just feels like a distraction, and it makes me wish that Lana had done the song alone. The thing is that Lana didn't really deliver either. Her vocal performance was shaky, and there was clearly nerves creeping in. Things got very difficult for her on more than one occasion, and given that this kind of performance needs bombastic perfection, it was instantly noticeable whenever it was even slightly off. While the song was built on some strong foundations, it lacked the extra kick on that it needed in the last minute. Presumably, Georgia was what was meant to provide that. Because he didn't, you've heard everything this has to offer by the time we get to the halfway point. This one needed a few more studio sessions in the oven before it was released to the world. This is kind of weird because Lana and Georgia had the support of a major label in a larger and more established market that is Serbia, and alongside every other song that finished in the top 5 of this selection, they had songwriters from that country too. Either they wanted to go their own way, or the label thought this was genuinely ready to go and would get through the show fine, or there just weren't the resources in place to back this in the way it should have been. Whichever of these is the case, it's a failure that has to be looked at because it meant this massively under-delivered on its potential. More generally, this is a theme that I'm probably going to repeatedly emphasize in this video, and that's that there are some countries where this process just doesn't have the resources to take advantage of potential when it comes. This is a fact of life in smaller countries with less well-supported supported music industries. For example, in Malta this year, some of the artists have been very open about the limited resources available to them on the basis that Malta and Montenegro are very small countries. Clearly, there is a lot of Serbian creative influence, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it only further goes to highlight the fact that those roles cannot be filled because there isn't enough homegrown Montenegrin talent. Temperatura could have been developed into a really superb song and performance. With the right direction, the right staging, and the right preparation for the artists, we could have seen something really special, but in some smaller markets, these things just don't exist in the way that they should. It isn't even that money is the issue here as such, it's a fundamental lack of institutional knowledge. This is nobody's fault in the country, whether that's the broadcaster or the artists or the labels or anyone else, but it is a gap that should be addressed. When Eurovision inevitably starts looking for a wider social purpose for itself over the next few years, finding a way to develop musical and cultural spaces in small markets like this one might be a good place to start. If the contest could measurably contribute to making a more sustainable and professional music scene in countries that have struggled to establish them themselves, it would add a lot of meaning to the contest itself, firstly, and secondly, as a reward, you'd get better quality entries and higher quality performances. Overall, Lana and Georgia had a lot of potential in my view, but it's just that, and this song didn't deliver when it came to the staging and the live performance. We're going to move on to the next artist now, someone who emerged from a regional singing competition in the Balkans that I had never heard of before this video, Lara Baltic, with her song Rhythm Boy.
You're my rhythm boy. You're my rhythm boy. And you're my playboy.
We are Lara Baltic's Rhythm Boy. We are Lara Baltic's Playboy. We are Lara Baltic's Lover Boy. We are Lara might not be carrying the flame to Eurovision for Montenegro, but she carries this performance well, and she successfully stole Temperatura's nachos in the process. This had a lot of what I was desperate to see from Lana and Georgia. We had the kind of energetic and on-point choreo that lacked, and Lara's vocal was so much better for the most part, although in some sections she was a little breathy. In addition, this song had something to elevate it in the last minute. In this case, it was a dance break. It might be conventional, but unlike Temperatura, at least it was there. Once again, you do have some of the same unavoidable problems. The ability to sell a song like this is limited when resources and production are not at the highest level, although of course this wouldn't be as much of a problem if you actually made it to Eurovision. On the flip side, one problem that would be absolutely in Lara's control was her stylist. Whoever did this should be sacked immediately. Luckily for Lara, the Montenegrin public do not concern themselves with fashion crimes, and she won the public vote in the country by a hefty margin. An added oddity of this show is that this was blended with the international televote in a slightly confusing way that is detailed by this table. Presumably, this was to balance keeping open the income stream from international voters while ensuring the Montenegrin public had a decent proportion of the say themselves. What was an added curiosity to Lara's public vote victory, though, was who was backing her. She had previously won an international but Serbian-dominated competition known as Rhythm of Europe, and the team behind that show were intimately involved in her Montesong participation. Though we don't know for sure, the implication of the social media output is that they seem to have basically arranged everything about Lara's show. Where things got particularly odd was this post, detailing a competition where, if you voted enough times for Lara, and proved it, Rhythm of Europe would enter you into a draw where, if you won, you could win trips to Budapest, Barcelona, and to the Eurovision Song Contest itself in Vienna in May. You qualified for different trips based on how many times you voted. While making this video, I fell down a bit of a rabbit hole with Rhythm of Europe. It has multiple variations in Montenegro, Serbia, and elsewhere, and I found myself watching a whole load of bizarre auto-tune performances representing the local town or village of the performer in question, who must be under the age of 24, all of whom are assigned Eurovision countries to pick songs from. Lara Baltic won this competition previously by singing Slow-Mo. Despite the fact that she's a great singer, they gave her the most egregious lip sync that I've ever seen in my life. For some reason as well, the intro to every performance is a snippet of Ishkoma.
Pjesma 15. Dovoj France.
The question I found myself trying to answer here is, what does Rhythm of Europe gain by pushing their girl so much in Montesong like this? I'm fairly sure that the reason is, it gives them something to offer performers in their own competition if they win. That in turn is going to encourage participation and engagement in their own events. Lara doing well in a competition like Montesong then raises that visibility, I mean, we're talking about it here, and in turn that results in more sponsorship money coming into the competition as well. That way they can keep forcing some poor girl from rural Serbia to do the unicorn dance break. Before I get too far away from the point here, let's steer it back towards Montesong. Running competitions like this, where people are incentivized to vote dishonestly, should definitely be against the rules. On a scale of 1 to every day I'm losing my mind, it's not the most egregious voter manipulation I've ever seen, but it's certainly odd, and it's certainly not in the spirit of the competition. The whole thing is made weirder by the fact that Rhythm Boy is titled in a way that is clearly a reference to the Rhythm of Europe competition. All of this considered, it was still probably one of my favourites because it's so trashy, but it's trashy and performed competently. That makes it really fun. While Lara did win the televote, she didn't win the competition overall, and I promise we will talk about the winner in a minute, but first we need to take a little detour. That's to the song that I feel most cynical about in this selection. That's Georgia, who appears to have gotten lost on her way to Norway MGP with her song Dominoes.
Are you the one to steal the show when your insecurities are falling like dominoes?
We have another entry to add to our Run to the Hills Queen of Kings The Game pipeline, and this time around it's Georgia with Dominoes. This sounds exactly like Queen of Kings, and to be fair, that does make sense because it is written by the same sorts of Nordic songwriters. That does come with some positives because a team that involves people like Joy Deb and David Lindgren Zacharias, as this song does, is always going to be decent and it's always going to be well produced. It's going to be put together in a coherent way and it's going to sound slick. That is just about where my positivity ends. What I don't understand is why Georgia is even singing this song. Like, it sounds nothing like any of her back catalogue, and she was in Montesong last year with a song that sounded nothing like this. She's been prolifically releasing music for a while, and this is just totally out of step with everything else she's done. We can take as an example one of her recent other releases like U Tvojem Očima, which is a much better song and a much better fit for her voice. I actually genuinely enjoyed listening to that. Dominoes is just totally out of step. It doesn't make sense. I really do understand the allure of Nordic songwriters and producers who have proven track records at Eurovision, but they are not a silver bullet. And you're taking a massive risk by picking up a song that in all likelihood was not written with you in mind. I'm really having a hard time believing that Georgia was part of the actual writing process for this, and she's not listed as a songwriter. Where these kinds of songwriters work best is where they can combine with an artist who already has a vision. Think Statements by Loreen. She made that song with Joy Deb, and in my opinion, it is unbelievable and one of the best entries ever in any national final. That's an example of how it works. Dominoes is an example of how it really doesn't. In addition to that, songs like this take on a life of their own when they're in a high production, high value staging environment like you have in Sweden or Norway. It's much less effective when you're in a TV studio in Montenegro. This was totally unsuited to her voice and to her onstage persona. She struggled throughout, and it felt like the song was dragging her along because she simply couldn't live up to it. The total lack of any proper choreo, and in fact the total lack of any dancers at all, only made things worse. This was a failed experiment, and I can't help but think, why did Georgia even do it? We can't know for sure, but I really can't help but feel like she went to Montesong with this song for a competitive reason, not for a musical one. That was her first mistake. Hopefully this has been a learning experience, because any song that is like Queen of the Kings or like Run to the Hills needs an Alessandra or a Clara Hammerstrom to pull it off. Georgia is not either of those people. This was never going to work, and every element of it was a mistake. Now, as promised, it's time to turn to the winner, and don't worry, we're gonna get to the Instagram shit-flinging in a minute as well. Like the other songs that we discussed, the winner was a pop song, but it was a lot angrier. It came from Tamara Zivkovic, and the song was Nova Zora. Let me just say right out of the gate that in retrospect, this was so obviously the right choice, and I'm really glad it won. Just like Georgia, Tamara is a returnee from last year's show. Just like Georgia, her sound is very different this time. The difference is, Georgia seems lost, whereas Tamara feels like she's really come into her own. Nova Zora is in the school of Balkan pop songs, just like some of its other competitors. But it has an edge that nothing else here really did once we got to the live performances. This is angry and gritty, but in a way that feels compelling rather than shouty. And it has a hatful of elements that, if they're exploited in the right way, could produce a really strong overall package. It definitely has a little bit of a Gaga element to it, and I think they'd be well served to lean into this a little bit as well. Luckily, I think those vibes have kind of already been identified, and they seem to be well on the way to making the most of them. The way this this is choreographed and the way the dancers are being dressed seems to be deliberately invoking the right folklore tropes, primarily that of the succubus, and making it slightly homoerotic, which is the perfect blend for this kind of environment. The song itself really leans into the sort of fantasy horror vibes. That's primarily thanks to the operatic backing vocals, and the visual of all of the dancers screaming the lyrics in Tamara's face is really powerful and really well done. At the moment, I feel like a lot of these ideas are still in an early stage. Luckily, they have lots of time to build on them. The potential at the moment has been naturally limited by the venue in which Montesong took place. These limits are not going to apply so much in May. The problem for this to solve then is, how do you scale it up? And how do you see it through to its full potential? Given the budgetary constraints on the Montenegrin delegation, unless they get a lot of sponsorship, things like pyro are simply going to be unaffordable. So some creativity is going to be needed to really maximize this effect, but with vastly more technical expertise and a few more camera angles available in Vienna, I'm sure they'll find a way to do it. They're on the right path now. If they can take advantage of this to the fullest, I really think that we could be on to see a first Montenegrin qualification in very many years. That said, they really need to lean into it. I want to see Tamara looking scary and demonic, surrounded by dancers who also look scary and demonic. Don't let me down. Every goth in Europe is counting on you, and if you don't have at least one church calling your performance blasphemous, I will be disappointed. Now, this should be the end of the video, possibly with an outro about how Montesong has grown in the last year, and how it can continue to be built up to support the Montenegrin music industry. There was a lot to celebrate in terms of a show that was genuinely better produced, with much higher quality songs, and the project as a whole feels really ambitious. That means it does have some rather dramatic flameouts, but I'd much rather they bit off more than they could chew than aim so low that the whole thing was a waste of time. It really needs to keep running because we saw steps forward in basically every single way this year. Hopefully, future editions will be able to build on that too. That was the note I would like to finish on. Unfortunately, a few people had to spoil the party. Kristina, who was also in this show but was so irrelevant that I decided not to bother talking about her before this point in this video, reacted extremely badly to her actually very flattering 4th place finish on Instagram. Having taken exception to the fact that Nina Žižić, who was the Montenegrin Eurovision entrant last year, had only given her 4 points in the jury, she posted and reposted messages saying, "Considering her stellar performance at Eurovision, how are you not ashamed? The public is laughing at you and remembering the missed notes. Vanity will be your end. A choked up throat will be your end." To be fair, Nina responded so gracefully to this, saying, "If I was angry at every person that didn't give me points, bitterness would have ended me long ago. Don't tarnish this great job." Đurica then weighed in for some reason, saying that the jury did not behave in a professional manner and didn't vote according to quality, but rather according to their own taste. What she means by this is that she's mad the Nordic pop song she bought off a shelf and then butchered on live TV landed her with an absolutely deserved 0 points from the jury. She closed her statement with, "It's not enough to be on the Eurovision stage." A veiled jab not only at Nina Žižić, but one of the other jurors, Asja Djokovic, who just participated in Junior Eurovision and is 13 years old. Đurica is beefing with a child. Finally, and rightly, the show's director stepped in to defend Nina, Asja, and the program at large, as well as slamming participants who had attacked them on social media and dropped out of pre-planned group performances to take place after the show after they didn't get the result they wanted. This is such a shame, but luckily I think the solution is easy. Montenegro is not a big place and there are not that many bridges to burn. So Kristina and Đurica will probably face the consequences of this behavior without us having to do anything about it. It's so selfish and quite frankly pathetic to make it all about you when you lose through reasons which were entirely foreseeable and entirely your own fault. These two brought songs that anyone could have told you were never going to be contenders. And the only disgrace here was their own behavior. If they thought any differently, it's because they're deluded. Please don't come back again. We don't want to hear from you and you will not be receiving a Christmas card. Now I've got that off my chest, we can actually end this video. Despite the chaos, things persisted and the show improved. What's more, Dolce Hera returned with another iconic performance. And also, there was this guy. With that, we've come to a rather angry and bombastic end, which kind of fits this show really well. There are many more shows like it all over Europe over the next few months, and many more rabbit holes to fall down. You should make sure that you're subscribed to this channel so you don't miss any of it. For now, thank you for watching, and I'll see you again very soon.